Hello, everyone, and welcome. I hope you're having a wonderful Friday. Hope everyone can hear and see myself and Nick. So firstly, this is the first ever episode segment of Fringe Legal Edge. And the idea behind the segment is really to have discussions with leaders and experts aimed at giving your practice an edge. So we'll cover a whole host of topics in the next few weeks. This is an experimental series, so would appreciate any feedback you have. For those that don't know me, my name is Abhijat Saraswat. Most call me Ab, and I am the host of Fringe Legal Podcast. I also work at Litera separately. And if you don't know Fringe Legal, check us out. But really, firstly, I wanted to welcome Nick. Nick, thank you for joining me as my first guest. Hopefully Nick can hear and see us. Okay, seems like we have lost Nick. So we'll give him a couple of seconds to come back and rejoin. Whilst we do that, I'm going to just set up the show, and hopefully I don't have to improvise the whole show myself. So just a little bit of background about Nick. Nick is the CEO of Think Legal Tech, and really I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago, and the topic we wanted to discuss today, what we wanted to have a chat about, was really the state of legal technology, specifically within Europe. But I'm sure some of those trends will certainly be carrying over to other jurisdictions as well. And we wanted to pick Europe as the topic, one, because Nick is based there. He's actually from Copenhagen in Denmark. And second, so we can actually look at a small region, which has a number of different things going on. So if you look at various European countries, what's going on. And Europe has also become, at least in my personal opinion, a bit of a hotbed for experimentation and new technology. So we wanted to cover a lot of that and more. So I'm hoping Nick will be back with us very shortly. He just messaged me to say that his internet has crashed, so he'll be back with us shortly. So bear with us. Three of the points I had were looking at what's driving the change, lessons that we can actually learn from things that have happened in the past, as well as from other verticals. And then lastly, what kind of pressures are being put onto internal team, and actually here specifically talking about GCs and in-house counsel. So as I buy us time and try and do this solo, anyone who's watching this live, if there's other items you certainly want to hear about today or in the future, please do message us in the chat box if you're watching this live. Otherwise, you can reach out to us after the event as well. All right. Nick, you are back with us. Can you hear us?
Yoo-hoo! Now I can. Thank goodness. That was, that was exciting in the Chinese curse kind of sort of way. Maybe an interesting times. That was great.
Yeah. And well, I think people have learned that I have very, very terrible improv skills. I try to bias about 3 minutes a time. So just so you know, what you missed in the time that you got disconnected was I've given a brief introduction to you, and I've introduced the session a little bit. So it'll be a bit of fun and games.
Cool.
But let's get started. So actually, before we begin, you're obviously the CEO and co-founder of Think Legal Tech. So let's start with what that is. And what I set up as the stage was the three things I wanted to cover, and we may or may not get to all of them, is what's going on with the legal tech space within Europe, and maybe widely, what's driving that change, lessons we can learn from other verticals perhaps, and what are some of the pressures that are being put onto the different people involved within this profession. But let's start with you. Tell us who you are, what you do, and your story.
Cool. I'm half Danish, half English, half American. Born in London, grew up a little bit all over, and spent 20 years in the US. And as of tomorrow, will have spent 20 years in Denmark, which makes me out to be 51. And done a number of different things, but spent the last 15 years working in tech. Mm-hmm. And Think Legal Tech is here to address the problem of discovery. there are a million things happening in legal tech, and they are running in 1,000 different directions at once. And it spans from first movers. There are lawyers out there who have every toy and learn to code, on a Unix machine. And then there are others. So it spans really wide. So our goal is to bring together the lawyers, the general counsels, the law firms, the law schools, the vendors of all the solutions, plus all the stakeholders, because it turns out, lo and behold, people have a strong opinion about the law. Have a look on the street, most cities nowadays. And so we're trying to help solve this discovery problem. And then on top of that is to help to solve this discovery problem, to enable collaboration so that people can get together and work together, find the solutions they need. And from the very, very basic things to big, sexy things like e-discovery or automating contracts, we can help make this happen. And we can also help people see that it's more than just about making law firms more efficient. It's also about other industries, about compliance, reg tech, let's see, the financial industry, and then all the way out to, let's say, addressing some of the problems that we've got on the street today. I think access to justice is a fascinating topic, and also one that's got some amazing business potential. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really good, and that sort of sets the stage. I liked how, the idea, well, not the idea, the reality of having a million different things going on and all at different paces. And of course, and I spoke to someone about this a couple of weeks ago, because what we may find, and this may well be the audience actually who's part of the Converted, that feels that there's a lot of things going on within the profession itself. And I'm going to talk generally about legal, but this applies to other micro niches like reg tech and so on as well, where we feel like a lot of progress is being made. But actually, if you take the macro view, if you just step back a little bit and look at the wider practices, the wider business as a whole, the industry as a whole, it's arguable whether that much has actually happened. Not that things haven't been done, but at least the adoption levels aren't there. They're not even close to where they should be, where people profess they should be, even if you go 5-10 years ago. And what do you think when you speak with individuals, companies, and so on, that are actually making things happen? What's the key driving force? And you talked about discovery a little bit, so expand on that a bit more, how that helps and what the link is between discovery and actually action at the end of the day. Because at least in my experience, discovery doesn't happen too frequently. It's certainly not as much as it should.
It doesn't. Well, baseline, I think that there's a lot of positive things happen. It's easy to get sort of down in the mouth about, oh my God, it'll never get better. Well, there are a couple of basic things that have happened that we can take heart from, which is that all lawyers now use computers. Now, all of them. And that there may be a senior partner somewhere who still gets things printed out and uses his Montblanc fountain pen, but they all use computers. That they all have, they might even have one of these, a smartphone. They've all got smartphones. For the last couple of months, they've all been working from home, which means that they now have an opinion about video conferencing, for example. It's not just something they're going to look at and on the one hand, on the other, they've got an opinion about it. And so we're moving on this. And then there's, and then the other thing is that the people that don't want to move, if you want to be blunt, we don't really have to worry about it, because beep, beep, this bus doesn't stop for anyone. That the customers aren't going to say, oh, well, it's okay. Thanks, Bob. It's fine that you didn't know about a technological solution for this.
Right.
My CTO's got that covered. Or the CFO talked to another CFO and they've got this covered.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen. And then what I think it's, when we're talking to the Converted is when we share tips. Oh yeah, oh wow, your guys are conservative. Well, so are mine. But I tried this and it worked really well. And
I think that's an important point, right? Because I think those are two different, well, there's probably more than that, but two certain ranges to the spectrum where you do have people that are just maybe using laptops for work for the first time, which sounds ridiculous to some people. But if you think about law firms, a lot of the times they were just relying on desktops, right? People didn't take the work with them other than in paper forms. And then you have those at the other end of the extremes who are able to run their entire practice from their iPad or a tablet or a smartphone, right? So you do have, and it's important to consider that and have that in mind, especially when you do talk to individuals, because as you said, when you're sharing tips, some of these things, and I say this because probably some of the things that we will likely cover today will seem extremely basic to a lot of people, right? And that's okay. I make no excuses, and I don't ask for forgiveness for that, because frankly, a large contingent of people need to go back to basics before we can start building on that. We need to set the foundation there.
This is this basics versus specialization is one of these core arguments or core factors that we really need to look at in what we're trying to do, which is the people we're working with are for the most part specialists. They went to school for a very, very long time, and they have worked in a specific piece of the law, and they are very, very good at that specific piece of the law. When I go out, and I've worked in tech for a couple of decades now, when I go out and I say legal tech, people are like, oh, dude, oh, okay. Wow, yeah, of course, yes, the law would reach lawyers eventually, so the tech would reach lawyers eventually. Oh, that's great to hear that's happening. Tell me about it.
Right.
You know, so we are in a teeny, 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 tiny niche of tech. But the basics, the same basics that apply everywhere else in tech apply here. That, you know, if you're not saving 2/3 of your budget for implementation, via con Dios, we all know how that's going to work out. You know, that it really is to start with basics. We need to start with a proof of concept, get one thing to work, and then teach everybody, you know, and then teach all the other things. That we need to really, really start with the basics.
And I think there's also a lot to learn from tech companies generally. And I make this point quite frequently where, and I'm certain I stole this from someone, so whoever came up with this, credit to you, whoever you are, that, you know, legal tech isn't just legal tech, right? There's plenty of other tech out there that can be leveraged within the legal profession. And it's too easy to forget that. Yes, we have some very, very specialized tools, and they are fantastic at what they do, right? And they should be used to solve the workflow that is specific to legal, right? So for example, if you're talking about reviewing legal documents and for a certain type of drafting issues, use a product for that. But if you're looking to just come up with, oh, I need a platform that helps me to do X, right? Look at the problem. Is this a legal specific problem to your niche, or is this something that everyone else has to deal with? And then you go with that. But ultimately, we are a very small drop in the ocean in the world of technology. And I guess, what do you tend to find as you speak to and look at jurisdictions across Europe? And one of the things that you would have missed because you were disconnected at the introduction, I said we wanted to use Europe as the focal point just because it's both large enough and also divided enough that you can see different hot pockets. And it is a good base for experimentation where you can actually see experiments at all different scales and the results of those. So what kind of trends have you been noticing in the last, I don't know, 6 months to a year, and especially in the last 6 months, you know, with COVID-19 and everything else going on, that skews some of the results and data. But what are you finding?
So we're seeing a really, really broad span. And one of the things with being up here, my partner Pernilla and I we're both based in Copenhagen, and we've worked a lot here in the Nordics. And that we quickly came up with an assumption that this is one of the most digitized parts of the world. Nobody my age in Denmark, for example, in the Nordics, I'm 50. Nobody my age has ever seen a checkbook, right? So, and so I have to explain what they are. And, you know, now just south of the German border, until COVID, they were paying cash, you know. And one of the things that e-commerce companies had to find out was that okay, the Germans are really, really law-abiding, so you send them whatever it is they're buying, and you put a bank draft in it, and they will go down to the bank, stand in line, and then give the lady, and that's how they will pay. Because the Germans don't use credit cards.
Right.
So there's, you know, so either side of the same border, and the Germans are otherwise pretty good at making pretty high-tech stuff, you know. Try getting a high-range Mercedes. Yikes. A lot of buttons. So there's this big span, and it, let's see, and the range is really, really big too. So we see a lot of experiences. Something that we do see in common with everywhere else is that, for example, your average general counsel is really, really conservative. And I had one take me to task at an event recently where he said, when you say that more than 60% of general counsels don't use any tools other than the Office package, that's not right, because we also use SharePoint. And stone face, I'm like, wow, is he teasing me? Is he playing a joke? Does he not know that SharePoint's part of Office? So there's a really, really big span.
Right.
But at the same time, we see people developing really smart solutions for them, working in with that. That up here, let's see, design is really, really, all of our furniture is super designed. We're design geeks.
Yeah.
And so one of the companies that I was, one of the law firms up here, for example, develops a solution with those super conservative people in mind. And so they created an AI solution for analyzing contracts that worked with Outlook. You just forwarded the PDF, they analyzed it, and they sent you a PDF answer back that you could store on your SharePoint solution if that's what you wanted. So that said, at the same time, I hear partners telling me, hey, Nick, you need to help us because the people that we want to offer partnerships to aren't staying long enough. They're leaving, especially the women. 90% of the women leave between child 1 and child 2. So they see the statistics, they see the need. And what we're trying to do is help provide them the solutions, is show them. And one of the ways is by going, the company next door, they're doing X and it's really working for them. And that's one great way of.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. We'll come back to sort of in-house counsels because I think we both have some opinions and things there to say. But it is important because there's plenty of challenges for that law firms and other businesses are facing. It's quite interesting how often people actually recognize what those challenges are. So it's really good to hear that the partners are coming to you, at least identifying, hey, we have an issue. Right, that is where it begins, and that's almost goes back to the discovery part. You need to be able to do that work to look inwards to see, okay, what is it that we want to improve? What are we looking to solve? Whether it's with technology, whether it's with HR, whether it's with something else, what do we want to accomplish? Why, right? And sometimes the answer is, and it's okay, there's nothing wrong with this. Sometimes the answer is we want to do this because the firm next door is doing it, right? Because that becomes important sometimes from a competitive point of view. I get that. But you do need to be able to have a bit of a deeper reason, especially if you want to drive change and bring people along with you. What else do you see? And what do you think what do you think are things that we can learn from other verticals or times in history? And I'm thinking about RegTech, I'm thinking about, as you've experienced it yourself as well, right? What was going on in 2008 and so on, in terms of the way people are working, the way that businesses are right now, and the way things are adopted and leveraged both now and what may be coming. We won't speculate too much into the future. I don't want to be unfair on anyone. But what do you see as things that are starting to emerge in the next sort of couple of months and weeks?
I think it's worth two industries, two professionals. We stick to the professions. We look at banking in the 1980s and 90s. I would look at accounting in the 90s and the noughts. And that there's a lot of fear about this technology amongst lawyers because it looks messy, and lawyers like things to be neat and tidy. The good news is there's case history for this. There is precedence. That if you look at the banking industry, I was born in London, grew up in London, Frankfurt, and New York. And I still remember as a child hearing in the early 80s, hearing the sanctity of the broker-client relationship. And you can't replace that with technology that's built on trust. Good luck, buddy. And that most banks were sort of combinations of people's last names, and they had brass plates, and not so much anymore. That if you look at accounting, when I went to university in the late 80s, a lot of accounting majors at my university, and the Big 12 used to show up to recruit them. And that, by the time I graduated, I think it was already the Big 4. It was the Big 5. Arthur Andersen did its thing. So there's plenty of precedents for this. So they should take heart from that.
And I think a lot of people have, the lawyers and others have experienced some of these things as well. But again, it's the ability to be able to look at things and not just say, hey, this won't happen to us, but also, what can we learn? This happened. And I mean, within legal itself, there's been, over the last 10 years or maybe 15 years, there's already been an abundance of mergers, right, across firms and so on. And I was reading somewhere, I think last week, that the Chamber Student Guide, which sort of is, at least in the UK, guides people, some of the firms that they had mentioned a decade ago, more than half of those firms either don't exist today, have merged, or are considering merging, right? That's ridiculous. It's more than 50%. It's a very, very high number in the span of sort of 10 years. And it's important, and that's fine. But again, it goes back to the basics. As a business, where do you add value? What do your users want, right? What are your clients actually looking for? And part of the reason you talked about the Big 12 and the 4 now, I guess, or 5, that's important. And I won't harp on this too much because too much has been written about it already, but they are an important consideration within Europe. And certainly the US and people here talk about it, but they are practicing. If you look at what the Big 4s can do, PwC has 3,600 lawyers, right? That's more lawyers than a lot of the large firms. Deloitte has 2,400, and these numbers are approximations, right? Some of the other Big 4s have massive global footprints. If you look at EY, if you look at KPMG, they both operate in 70 plus jurisdictions each, right? That's more than a lot of the large law firms. And of course, they have a lot of things going for them. They become this one-stop shop for their clients. Again, going back to what do your clients need? But they also have the challenge where the law firms, as you mentioned right at the very beginning, are specialists. That's where the law firms can provide a lot of very thorough, guided advice, and they can actually help their clients through. And it is changing. To everyone's credit, all the lawyers and a lot of the law firms I work with, things are changing. They are taking this to heart. It's just the pace of change has been slow so far. Let's just say that. I think it's accelerated tremendously, and the uptick of things like people just completely or trying to get rid of, working on paper has increased, thankfully. So they're turning a bit more Danish in that way. And that's improving, right? And I think you do need to continue that. And it needs to continue without the pressure of a global pandemic behind you, right? It should be more of a welcome change.
That's, what do we do about a global pandemic? Well, there's nothing that you and I can do. I can wash my hands and I can socially distance, but that's about as much as I can do. And so the answer is, how are we going to react? And if you look at the other businesses, again, what the good news is, there's other people, there's case history we can look at.
Right.
The wheel's been invented. Let's copy it. So what have banks done? They've gotten really, really, really good at looking at data. Yeah. What have accountants done? Really, really, really good at looking at data. Pro tip: if you're a lawyer, get really, really good at looking at data. And there's loads of data out there. We're talking to a couple of firms about dummy data and about helping the firms work together to gather dummy data to make it available so that people can build solutions for them.
Yeah.
So get really good at looking at the data. The data will let you do some really exciting things, like call up and say, "Hi, listen, we've been looking at what you're doing, and it turns out what you're doing was borderline illegal. Now it is illegal. If you stop now, you might not go to jail." And how much rather would you have that? Here in Copenhagen, where Danske Bank is, about a mile from where I'm sitting, and they lost their chairman, their CEO, and the Crown Prince, the fellow that was going to take over as CEO, all for something that they knew was illegal. But, well, it was making a lot of money. It was all going through this tiny little piece over in this tiny little office in Estonia. Now imagine, if you could have, you could have nudged them as their lawyer and said, that's just not going to fly. Your GC is giving you bad advice here. He's sitting in the meetings and he's wrong. So there's proactive advice. There's also, if I give an example, there are some things in this business that are going to go away. That the competition is not other law firms, and it's not even other lawyers. It can be, for example, something like the Paris Stock Exchange, Paris Bourse. There's a company up in Stockholm made a product called Insider Log, which is designed to track all insider share activity in small and medium-sized companies. Right now, this is good money if you're a law firm. If the price spikes up or down on a publicly owned company, the financial authorities are going to call within 3 days and say who knew what, when, and did they act on that information. Yep. And unless you have a large legal department, this is something where you've got to call outside counsel, and this is going to be a big bill. And if you're that outside counsel, this is great. This is good money. But guess what? There's an app for that now. And Paris Bourse and all the law firms in Stockholm knew this product was there. They're like, oh wow, cool product, interesting. Well, let's have a look at that. And on the one hand, and on the other hand, and let's look. Paris Bourse came along and said, you know what? That would make it more attractive for small and medium-sized companies to list with us. If we took away that fear of that regulatory burden, of that compliance burden, Paris Bourse is not a law firm. It's not a legal tech company. It's not even, you could argue it is a tech company. It's got a very heavy tech component to what it does. But they took that legal product, boom. And that money, that task is no longer there for all the lawyers that serve Paris Bourse, those companies. Yeah. So you got to look at your business and see, everybody loves M&A. Woohoo, M&A. Great, big money. Why is it big money? Well, because there's lots and lots of details. There's lots of data. Now let's see. If you're a Big Four accountant and you have access to my data all the time, why am I going to come to, or if I am going to come to the big law firm, it's for the negotiation bit. But I'm going to come and all my data, all the paperwork's already structured, and create the data. No, we've already got the deal room. We've already got our paperwork is, all our paperwork gets written in the right format. So, so we don't
very
have
much so.
2 weeks renumbering the pages? No.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm conscious of time. I've been granted 5 extra minutes or so to extend, which is good. But one of the things I'll say, and then I'll start summing up, I've certainly wrote down some action points. One of the things I did want to mention, we talked about GCs. I did want to add a bit about in-house counsel. I've been speaking to a fair few of them in the last couple of weeks. And I think one of the positive trends I've started to see is, look, there is no doubt, and everyone talks about it, there is increased pressure on in-house teams, whether they're GCs or other in-house lawyers. But one of the great things is they actually have a much higher stake in the business now, right? They are getting more and more better at having sector-specific knowledge, which means that it's harder to compete. So if you are a law firm trying to do something, you got to keep up with that. Make sure that you understand the sector and the industry you're going for. GCs are becoming, I don't want to say common, but certainly more of a common place in the boards for a lot of companies, which is important. There is a increase in the risk function that the in-house teams have to do. They are becoming way more business savvy. So the number of GCs and in-house counsel I know that have MBAs or some other business degree, or at least have an interest in that, it is great, right? Because then you are stepping out of just becoming a lawyer to a strategist and a business advisor as well. And the great thing is, and this is where I suppose as we move into the takeaways, it is becoming very clear there are some law firms which are exemplary because they are helping their GCs become better GCs. They are providing them training on, this is what's happening in this sector, this is how you practice law, and this is what we're seeing, because they have that expertise, right? So how do you collaborate with them? That becomes super important. I did want to mention that because we teased it at the beginning. Welcome any comments on that, and then I can start wrapping us up as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's I've done an awful lot of work coming in to try and help people from the outside. And at the beginning, when I talked about basics, that it really is about the basics. And if we're talking legal tech, the solutions that we bring have to work out of the box. They have to fit in. They have to be easily implementable. They just don't have time. Wait, okay, you want me to take out 2 days out of my life to learn how to use your software and then explain it to everybody else? Not going to happen.
Yeah.
But just put the buttons where everybody else puts the buttons. Again, copy, the apps on your telephone. If I can't get an app to work while I'm cycling through Copenhagen in rush hour, I'm uninstalling it. And unfortunately, there's a way these things work. Yeah. It's a bit like with our webinars. So we're talking to the converted here, and that the unconverted, the version of this they want is a slide with 3 bullets, 3 takeaways. And we really need to take that to heart, because it may suck and we can be angry about it, but it's just how it is.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear more and more GCs getting a seat at the table, because that compliance voice and that fellows, we're all going to go to jail if you do that. That's a voice they need to hear. For sure. And for the unconverted, as you put it now, I will provide the 3 bullet points. So firstly, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you coming on as the first guest. Thanks for the patience with the technical.
It happens. It's part of the fun nowadays. So yeah, in takeaway, so we did cover a lot. We kind of talked a little bit about what's happening in Europe and otherwise. I would say the takeaways for me are, number one, go back to the basics. Think about, how do you add value to your clients? Well, you listen to your clients, right? It cannot be said enough. Listen to what your clients, what your customers actually want. Sometimes you need to tell them what they need, but you also have to listen, work towards that. Second, as you think about the industry, especially in this attention economy, as I'm calling it now, where you are competing not just with other law firms and other entities, but you are just competing for your client's attention, frankly, amongst all of the apps, whether they're legal or otherwise, right? Think about who your competition is. And until you understand that fully, you can't really react to it.
Not just other lawyers.
Exactly. And then lastly, as you think about providing service to clients, and again, I'm putting on the very much a law firm hat, but applies to other industries too, think about becoming a proactive advice giver or a solution architect, if I can call you that, which means understanding and looking at the data. Because until you know what is going on, what the trends are, what is happening with your customers or your own business, how can you react to it? How can you forecast something if you have no understanding of what your goals are, where you want to begin? So those are my sort of 3 core bullet points, as you put it. But I hope people enjoyed the session. Join me again next week. And thank you for watching Litera TV.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.